Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Halima, the first reporter of Sikolohiyang Filipino. So before we proceed, I will read the learning objectives of our topic. Number 1, what is Sikolohiyang Filipino? Basic tenets and principle of Sikolohiyang Filipino, approaches and method of Sikolohiyang Filipino, formulation of Sikolohiyang Filipino, distinction among the forms of psychology in Philippines. The last one is Filipino psychology in the Philippine social sciences. So now let us proceed to the what is Sikolohiyang Filipino. Sikolohiyang Filipino is the study of emotion, experience, knowledge, awareness of one's surroundings, information, and understanding habits and behavior, and the soul, which is the way to learning about people conscience. Also, Sikolohiyang Filipino reflect the history, language, arts, and common experience of people of Asian heritage. Virgilio Enriquez proposed that unique Filipino personhood or pagkataong Filipino. So when we say Sikolohiyang Filipino, it is the study of isip, malay, ulirat, kaluluwa, damdamin, kilos, ugali, asal, at gawin ng isang Filipino. And it is also based on history and culture. So when we say psychology, it is derived from two words. Psycho or psych means mind, soul, and spirits. While ang logos naman or logi is the study of or to study. So it is the study of mind, soul, and spirits. So either ang Sikolohiyang Filipino or pag-uugali ng isang Pilipino is namamana natin sa parents natin or nakukuha lang natin sa experience or sa surroundings natin. So also ang example ng Sikolohiyang Filipino or pag-uugali ng Pilipino is ang pagmamano, ang paggamit ng po at opo, pati yung mga beliefs natin na ang Philippine hero is Dr. Rizal is ito yung mga example ng Sikolohiyang Filipino. So mamaya i-explain ng mga kasama ko yung mga pag-uugali ng mga Pilipino. So now let us proceed to the who is Virgilio G. Enriquez. Virgilio G. Enriquez, also known as Dr. E. or Doc E, was a social psychologist and the father of Filipino psychology. And siya rin or ama ng Sikolohiyang Filipino. And he was born on November 24, 1942 at Santol, Balagtas, formerly Biga, Bulacan. He was the youngest of 5 children to Arsenio Liberan Enriquez and Rosario Galvez Gaspar. And he is the founder of Pambansang Samahan ng Sikolohiyang Filipino. Our corporate name is National Association of Sikolohiyang Filipino. And Virgilio Gaspar Enriquez formally initiated into psychology in 1963. So, nagturo siya sa University of the Philippines noong 1963. And noong in 1966, umalis siya ng Pilipinas at nagpunta sa United States para i-pursue yung master niya. And then later on, nag-doctoral degree siya ng psychology sa Northwestern University at Evanston, Illinois. At nag-start din siya sa pagtuturo ng psychology sa mga Pilipino. And marami din siyang na-discuss at na-arguments or na-debate na mga kaklase niya or mga kaibigan at mga professor niya sa Northwestern University gaya nila Ernesto Col Lise Chris, and Donald Campbell. Itong tatlo na to is kilala din sila as uh, American psychologists. At in 1977 is na his Western education actually drove him to be more Filipino-oriented in his teaching and research in psychology. And he established the Philippine Psychology Research House or PPRH, which is later on naging Philippine Psychology Research and Training House or PPRTH. And it became home to materials one Sikolohiyang Filipino, growing to its present size of more than 10,000 reference. And naging chairman din siya ng Department of Psychology noong 1977 hanggang 1982. And he motivates students to write their paper in Filipino to discover the importance of ethnic concept. Then marami na din siyang nag-contribute at lumago na sa national language. So si Enriquez is marami na din siyang natanggap na award, marami na din siyang naging kaibigan at mga scholarship. Both international and sa Pilipinas. So, ang awards niya, may natanggap siyang award na dalawa, which is the noong 1982 is nakatanggap siya na Outstanding Young Scientist of the Philippines National Academy of Science and Technology. Noong 1997 naman is nakatanggap din siya ng National Achievement in the Social Sciences Awards by the National Research Council. So, si Virgilio Enriquez is, ang kaniyang tatay is tinitrain siya na magsalita ng native language or since he was child. So, ang halimbawa nito is, ang tatay niya is may binibigay siyang paper, English language paper. Then, si Virgilio is ita-translate niya ito into Filipino or Tagalog. And it will read it as if it was originally written on it. So, ganun din yung nangyari sa PhD dissertation niya. Ganun din yung ginawa niya, binasa niya ng pure Tagalog sa kanyang tatay.
Good morning, everyone. I am Farhanna Manalao, and I am the second reporter. And I will be the one who will discuss why do we need Filipino psychology, what are its outcomes, and how did Sikolohiyang Pilipino begin. Filipino psychology is needed because for centuries, our behavior and culture have been studied and understood using Western theories, which can lead to inaccurate and distorted understanding of Filipino behavior and culture. We Filipinos are often viewed through the judgmental and impressionistic point of view of the colonizers rather than through an understanding of their own culture. The Philippine experience has shown that using Western models of psychology alone cannot fully understand the Asian culture. And now, let us proceed to what are its outcomes. Sikolohiyang Pilipino as an indigenous psychological framework has led to the development of several key outcomes. This includes body of knowledge, indigenous research method, indigenous personality testing, and new direction in teaching psychology. Body of knowledge includes indigenous concepts and theories. We have the pakikisama and loob that are unique to the Filipino culture, indigenous personality testing that led to the development of indigenous personality tests that are specific to the Philippine context, New direction in teaching psychology, Filipino psychology has provided a framework for studying and teaching psychology in the Philippines. And lastly, active participation. Overall, Filipino psychology provides a framework para mas madali nating maintindihan ang kultura at pinagmulan ng Pilipinas. Let us proceed to our next topic, which is how did Sikolohiyang Pilipino begin? Filipino psychology is an indigenous psychological framework that developed in the Philippines during 1960s. The framework emerged as a response to the inadequacy and unfairness of Western-oriented approaches to psychology, which were being taught and studied in the Philippines at the time. In the 1970s, the development of Sikolohiyang Pilipino as an indigenous psychological framework began to take shape. Nagsimula ito nang bumalik sa Pilipinas si Virgilio Gasper Enriquez. He is a Filipino intellectual na galing sa United States. Sa kanyang pagbabalik din, nagsimula din si Dr. Alfredo Lagmay Enriquez at ang mga iba pang Filipino intellectual upang magsimula sa kanilang pananaliksik. Ang goal ng kanilang research project is para ma-explore ang kultura at pinagmulan ng Sikolohiyang Pilipinas. They also tried to examine the way of thinking, emotions, behavior, and values of Filipino in their own cultural perspectives. Lastly, in the 1975, Enriquez chaired the unang pambansang komperensya sa Sikolohiyang Pilipino, or the first National Conference on Filipino Psychology, held at the Abelardo Auditorium at the University of the Philippines. During this conference, their ideas, concepts, and formulations were formally articulated, discussed, and presented. The conference served as a platform to discuss the research conducted by Enriquez, Lagmay, and others. That would be all. Again, I am Farhanna Manalao, and let us proceed to our next reporter.
So let us proceed to approaches and methods. When we say approaches, it means lapit, and the methods naman is pamamaraan. So now let us proceed to the number 1 methods and approaches, which is the pakikipagkwentuhan. In this method, the researcher engage in storytelling with an umpukan. The researcher merely serve as the facilitator, while the kalahok or participants are the ones who are to talk. The term kwento form of the Spanish words cuento. Literary means to tell a story. Next is panunuluyan. In this method, the researcher stays in the home of his kalahok or participants while he conduct their search with consent by the host family. Those heads serve as a tulay or tuan umpukan. So the term tuloy, which is the root word of the term panunuluyan, literally means to go in. So the next one is pagdadalaw-dalaw. In this method, the researcher occasionally visit the house of his host or tulay as opposed to staying in the house. The term dalaw literally means visit. So next is pagtatanong-tanong. In this method, the researcher undergoes a kind of questioning session with his kalahok or participants. Lead question or the question which is directly refers to the topic being studied are supposed to be asked, and instead they are derived from the answer of the participants. So the word tanong literally means question. So the next one is pakiramdam. In this approach, the researchers uses entirely his or her feelings or emotions to justify if his participants are ready to be part of his research or not. So the term damdam literally means inner perception of emotions.
So as what you all know, there are huge differences of culture and human flourishing between Western and Eastern. And some researcher uses this Western model to conduct a study about personality and human psychology. That's why Hukano 1978 stated that there are lack of similarity between the research findings and the real Filipino behavior. So good thing Hukano, Ramirez, and of course the father of Sikolohiyang Filipino, Virgilio Enriquez, conducted a study of what really the Filipino personality is. So because of Spanish, Americans, and Japanese colonizers that colonized our country, it is hard to find a reliable method to use para ma-analyze kung ano nga ba talaga ang real behavior ng mga Pilipino. Kung totoo ba na galing talaga sa mga ancestors natin yon, or kung galing yon sa na-adapt natin na pag-uugali ng mga colonizers na sumakop sa atin. So, good day. I am Ameraiza Samporna and I will be discussing about the general Filipino traits based on the scientific methods and observations.
So, first on the list is the smooth interpersonal relations or SIR. It is the ability to get along with others in such a way that conflict is avoided. So, tayo mga Filipino daw is magagaling makipagkapwa. Wherein kahit complete strangers yung kausap natin is kaya natin makipagsalamuha sa kanila without getting awkward with them or getting in conflict with them. So, the SIR is acquired by three means: the pakikisama, the go-between, and the euphemism. So, pakikisama is derived from the Filipino word sama, meaning to go along. It refers to the yielding of a person's will to that of the leader or majority so as to make the group decisions unanimous. So, it is agreeing on the majority's decisions and plan para hindi magkaroon ng conflict with them. So, we Filipino tends to avoid getting labeled as KJ or Killjoy. So, that's why nakikisama tayo or nag-agree na lang tayo sa plans and decisions ng karamihan. So, second is go-between. So, go-between is basically being a facilitator or mediator between two parties. So, tayo mga Filipino is mahilig tayong makisali sa conflict or sa thing ng dalawang parties, wherein tutulungan natin silang magkaayos or magkalapit. So, ang example nito is yung reto or pagiging tulay between two people na gusto nila yung isa't isa but they cannot admit it. So that's why the third party tends to para makikisali siya para magkalapit yung dalawang yon. So next is the euphemism. So ang euphemism is stating an unpleasant truth, opinion, or request with beautiful language and fine manner. So tayo mga Filipino daw is magagaling or mahihilig tayong mag-sugarcoat ng sasabihin natin. So, for instance, ginagawa natin ito in a way na pabiro, wherein imbis na masakit yung sasabihin natin sa iba or alam natin na ma-hurt sila, is we tend to deliver it in a nice way or in a humorous way na kung saan hindi sila ma-offend or masasaktan sa kung ano yung sinabi natin sa kanila. So next on the list is the hiya. So many researchers define it in a different way, but basically it is mean shame or embarrassment. So for me, hiya means fear of being criticized because of embarrassment and losing dignity. So kumbaga for example, magsasayaw tayo sa PE ganon. So, nahihiya tayo not because ayaw natin na gawin yon, but because nahihiya tayo na baka magkamali tayo or natatakot tayo na baka pagtawanan tayo or maging katawa-tawa tayo sa mata ng karamihan na makakapanood sa mga sasayawin natin, ganon. So, ang pagiging mahiyain is may pros and cons siya for me. So, ang pros niya is napag-iisipan natin ng maayos yung gagawin natin dahil nga takot tayo na mapahiya at makriticize ng ibang tao. And ang negative effect naman nito para sa akin is many opportunities ang nawawala dahil sa hiya. So dahil sa takot natin na makriticize ng ibang tao is ina-avoid natin or natatakot na tayo mag-take a risk kahit magandang opportunities yung nandyan. Kasi ayaw natin na masabihan tayo ng kung ano-ano ng ibang tao. Third on the list is the bahala na. It is an expression derived from Filipino word bathala, meaning God. So, ito yung ugali kung saan nagmamarkabahala tayo or ipinapag sa Diyos na lang natin yung mga mangyayari sa buhay natin or yung mga bagay-bagay na tingin natin is hindi na siya kontrolado or hindi na natin siya kontrolado. Kumbaga, Diyos na ang bahala na kung ano yung mangyayari is kagustuhan na yun ng Diyos. So, that kind of mentality is a negative mentality dahil tingin natin ang Diyos ang gagawa ng lahat para sa atin. Like for example, meron tayong problema na tingin natin is hindi natin kayang lusutan or hindi natin kayang isolve sa sarili natin, is hindi na din tayo mag-effort dahil iniisip natin na kaya na ng Diyos na i-resolve yung problema na yon, which is hindi naman siya mangyayari or hindi siya masosolve hanggat hindi tayo mismo yung maghahanap ng solusyon para maayos ang conflict or problema na dumating sa buhay natin. So, fourth is the ningas kugon. So, ningas means to catch fire while kugon is the fast-burning kind of grass. Thus, ningas kugon refers to enthusiasm that is only at the start but gradually dies down. So, ginagamit natin ito to describe a person na kung saan sa una lang magaling. It is a toxic trait because hindi tayo consistent sa ginagawa natin. Like for example, nung magbagong taon is nag-list down na tayo ng mga gusto natin na New Year's resolutions. So, sabihin na natin ng mga first month, first days ng taon is ginagawa natin or practice natin yung New Year's resolutions na yon. But sa kalagitnaan ng taon is parang bumabalik tayo sa dati or parang mas nagiging worse pa tayo than the other past year, ganon. So, it is a toxic trait kasi imbis na mag-develop yung ginagawa natin is mas lalo siyang nag-fade out or mas lalo siyang nagiging worst. So, ningas kugon is something na hindi dapat ginagawa ng mga tao or yung inuugali kasi parang hindi na tayo magde-develop sa buhay kapag hindi tayo productive or hindi tayo consistent sa mga ginagawa natin na makakatulong sa buhay natin, ganon. Fifth is the utang na loob. So, familiar naman na tayo lahat sa kung ano yung utang na loob. So, utang na loob is the debt of gratitude. So, pag may ginawa yung ibang tao para sa atin is we want to return the favor. Kumbaga, gusto natin na may gawin din tayo para sa kanila. That's why nagkakaroon tayo ng tinatawag na utang na loob. Like for example, is yung mga anak is expected na maging obedient at maging respectful sa mga parents dahil may utang na loob sila kasi pinakain at pinabinihisan and pinalaki sila ng parents nila. So, wherein, kapag lumaki na din sila or kapag kain na nila is sinusuportahan nila yung mga parents nila dahil sa utang na loob na yon, which is somehow it is negative kasi hindi naman hiniling ng mga anak na pumunta or mapunta dito sa mundo. So, it is a responsibility of parents. But since Ang utang na loob is one of the value na piniprimates natin na mga Pilipino is pag hindi mo ginawa yung bagay na yon sa tao na kung saan nagkakaroon ka ng utang na loob is you are labeled as rude or kumbaga walang utang na loob sa tao na yon. So, utang na loob could have negative effects also. Like for instance, to the lagay system of bribery and extortion. So, kapag kunwari, nagkaroon ka ng malaking utang na loob sa tao na masama ang ugali, is gagamitin nila ito sa'yo para i-guilt trip ka at i-control ka nila sa kung anong gusto nilang ipagawa sa'yo. Dahil nga may utang na loob ka sa kanila, is kailangan mo mag-payback. But unfortunately, yung utang na loob is ito yung utang na mahirap bayaran or hindi siya na babayaran kasi lagi yun isusumbat sa'yo ng taong pinagkakaroon mo ng utang na loob. So, sixth is the hospitality or it is the common impression sa atin ng mga taga ibang bansa na hospitable tayo. So, it is welcoming others to one's homes and offer the best into visitors. Like for example, kapag may bumisita sa atin ng mga foreigners or mga strangers, mga malayong kamag-anak, ganyan, is ang first natin na gagawin is o-offer natin sila ng makakain or maiinom man lang. So, kumbaga, we make them feel at home and encouraging them na wag mahiya. But Samson 1965 stated na ang hospitality or ang pagiging hospitable daw is parang sobrang galing mo makisalamuha or sobrang binibigay mo ang lahat sa ibang tao. Pero, dinideny mo yung same na bagay na binibigay mo sa ibang tao sa sarili mong pamilya mismo. Which is somehow totoo naman minsan. Kasi as I observed in some families na kapag sa ibang tao is inuuna nila palagi. Pero kapag sarili ng pamilya is parang na may limit, kumbaga may limit yung binibigay or in-offer nila na tulong para sa sarili nilang pamilya. So, last in the list is the amoral familism. So, ang amoral familism is a belief system emphasizes importance of family above all else. So, kumbaga, ang pamilya ang mauuna kahit na ano pang mangyari or ang pamilya ang inuuna natin sa kahit na ano pang bagay. So, as what I said in the introduction is magkaiba yung culture ng Western pati Eastern pagdating sa pag-mold ng mga anak. Kumbaga, pagdating sa human flourishing is magkaiba yung way nila. So, Western is kapag 18 ka na, you are expected na umalis na sa bahay ng parents mo at maging independent, like maghanap ng trabaho, ganyan, para buhayin ang sarili mo. While sa Eastern naman is kahit anong edad ka pa, kahit 30s ka na, ganun, kapag wala ka pang asawa is kailangan ang parents mo pa rin ang susundin mo or parents pa rin ang uunahin mo. Or like kahit may asawa ka na, meron din mga pamilya na kahit may asawa na yung anak nila is kailangan pa rin tustusan ng anak yung parents nila dahil nga dun sa utang na loob. So, may consequences ang amoral familism. So, for instance, ang anak is ina-expect siya ng family niya na magbigay sa kanya kapag may trabaho na siya or kapag may income na siya, ganyan. So, dahil yon doon sa utang na loob niya sa parents niya. So, dahil nga iniisip ng karamihan na uunahin ng pamilya kahit ano, is parang nawawala yung productivity ng anak or ng isang tao kasi tingin niya lahat ng gagawin niya is para lang sa pamilya niya. Kumbaga kahit sarili niya na kagustuhan is hindi niya nagagawa dahil nga lagi niyang uunahin kung ano yung sasabihin ng magulang niya. So that's the end of my topic. So thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, feel free to message me and I will answer all of that. Thank you.
So this is the continuation of report of Miss Ameraiza. Studies show that values contrast or conflict often related to Filipino personality traits due to the influence of tradition versus modern ways, family versus school training, and urban versus rural influence, and that is according to the research on church in 1986. So dito natin makikita that church or sa mga western, yung behavior nila is like conflict, or there is a contrast about behavior natin kasi like for example in like family versus school. So yung family mo, sa family behavior mo is iba yung maa-adapt mo na behavior in your family, and iba rin yung maa-adapt mo na behavior in the school. Lapus in 1988 listed many polarities or contrast mentioned in the search study. Filipino personality, a review of research and writing in 1988. Some of the polarities or opposite is emphasized on smooth interpersonal relationship versus a high level of hospitality. So, dito, number one is, ito yung sinasabi natin na, yung pakikisama, we are Filipino na, ang dali-dali natin makisama, like for example in the previous example of sir, ay besh, mag-CR tayo, tapos kung naman na sinabihan is sasama, and that is what we call ISIR versus on the other hand, in the western, particular in the western, they are mahirap silang ayayain, or sometimes in a fellow Filipino na ang hirap-hirap sila ayayain, hindi sila active, may pa-edges pa nagagawin, keso ganito ganyan. Second is hiya versus predilection for status and rank, the tendency toward extravagance and boastfulness. So, heto yung for brief lang, hiya. So, it will be natural naman sa atin na may hiya tayo. Yung hiya is like shame in English. Versus yung walang hiya. So, being a Filipino, kung na sa atin, na-inherent na sa atin na meron tayong hiya, ano? Kasi, kung wala kang hiya, there is a negative effect, or there is negative thing na ganon, or tendency na kung wala kang hiya, for example, sa pagkain, kung wala kang hiya, lamon ka ng lamon. Or for example, kung wala kang hiya, ang yabang-yabang mo. Number 3 is bahala na versus about desire for security and advancement. So, dito sa bahala na is for example, in assignment. Umanswer ka nga, pero sabi mo, bahala na kung correcto or hindi. There is negative and positive effect na you accept kung ano man yung outcomes niya, kasi hindi mo siya totally desire na if you study or you answer well, there is a possible na 100% or even though 99.9% na mataas yung grades mo. Then, sa bahala na is i-accept mo kung average ba yung grade mo or hindi, or pasado ba or hindi. Kasi hindi mo siya pinapabayaan totally. You done your work, pero hindi siya totally na like 100% na you give your all for that matter. About desire to security and advancement. So, dito na yung, ito yung opposite ng bahala na. So, dito is like, there is, desire for that, specific, or yung way natin to achieve that matter. So, in this way, gagawin natin yung lahat ng makakaya natin to achieve our desire. For example, in study. So, yung bahala na is like, umanswer ka nga, pero hindi mo totally ginive yung 100% of like studies, like yung knowledge mo on that matter. While versus about of desire for security and advancement, heto na yung papasok is mag-i-study ako talaga, or like dito na yung papasok yung behavior mo na like gagawin ko yung lahat, makadinlister lang ako. So that is example of these two kind of polarities in the behavior of the Filipino. The core value of the Filipino personhood. Also, dito is pag-uusapan natin yung core values ng mga Pilipino. So, first things is kapwa or pakikipagkapwa, or in translate is shared identity. So, bakit siya like i-translate sa shared identity? So, according to the Virgilio Enriquez, which is yung kapwa daw is there is not literal translation, kasi yung kapwa means sa atin is like sa inner way natin, or innate na sa atin to yung sinasabing kapwa. So yung kapwa is I, you, or we, that we call kapwa. So sa pakikipagkapwa, pag sinabi natin pakikipagkapwa, it means you treat that person as like yours. For example, even though na like lahat ng may like kapatid, kaibigan, trabaho, kapamilya, kabit, even though negative or positive na matatawag natin yan na kapwa, yung bayanihan. So Filipino behavior like na inherent or like nakasanayan na nating mga Pilipino yung like bayanihan niya. Like for example, yung naplatan ka ng on that way, which is wala kang like kilala, or wala kang mga kamag-anak dyan na parte or banda na area. But when Filipino like, kasi kapwa ko to tapos tutulungan ka, so dyan natin makikita yung sinasabi nating pakikipagkapwa. Like they are participating their self, even though na hindi nila kilala yung tao yan, basta alam nila sa sarili nila, ay kapwa ko to Pilipino, tutulungan ko to. Like for example na rin sa ibang bansa, if like makita mo like Pilipino pala to, if nag-abroad, ay Pilipino pala to, then you're the other Filipino na like i-welcome ka nila. So ay kabayan ka, so that we call the behavior of the Filipino na like nasa core value na nating mga Pilipino, or nasa value na natin talagang mga Pilipino, yung sinasabing pakikipagkapwa or shared identity. So number 2 is pakiramdam, or the interpersonal values that characterizes Filipinos emotion. So pakiramdam, or dito na papasok yung like for examples, gagamitin na natin yung 5 sense natin, or like yung pandaman natin. For examples in emotional, so like for example sa ibang country, So there is Filipino na like parang walang-wala. So pag makita sila ng other Filipino or ka-Filipinos natin, which is pag makita nila like walang-wala na, so dyan na yung mararamdaman nila sa sarili, ay kapwa ko to. Pag pumasok na yung kapwa sa sarili mo, then papasok na rito yung sinasabing pakikiramdam. So alam mo sa sarili mo yung feeling na ganyan. So that why tutulungan mo siya, i-comfort mo siya. And that is literal na sa ating Pilipino ang mga gawain niya. So number 3 is kagandahang loob. So kagandahang loob is one of our core values. For example, like number 1, kapwa ko to. Then papasok na yung pakikiramdam mo kasi like kapwa ko to nga eh. Nararamdaman ko like yung needs, kasi nasa behavior na natin yan eh, yung like you volunteering yourself onto that person basta alam mo ay Pilipino to, tutulungan ko to kasi kapwa ko to. So on that way doon napapasok yung kagandahang loob or shared nobility. So shared nobility, this is grounded in Efron and pakikiramdam. So kagandahang loob may also be described as shared humanity. So that is nasa value na nating mga Pilipino. Like for example, sa mga bata sa kalye or mga taong kalye or mga taong nasa kalye or mga taong nahihirapan. So papasok na sa atin yung kagandahang loob. Bibigay mo to kahit walang-wala ka na, or may umutang kahit walang-wala ka na talaga, ibibigay mo, or may nanghingi sa'yo na isusubon mo na nga pero ibinigay mo pa rin. So that is the value of Filipino or kagandahang loob na tinatawag or sinasabi natin. Human interactions essentials in understanding Filipino personality generally. So, levels of Filipinos typically categorize their interaction in 2 categories, which is those with ibang tao or outsider and those hindi ibang tao or what we call people who are part of our group. So, the level of interaction or interconnection is first is pakikitungo or what we call is amenity or the level of civility with. Dito na papasok is like pakikitungo, like nakikitungo ako, or like what we call there you have a transaction on that person. Like sa pakikitungo there is transaction between people to people or people to group. Yan yung sinasabi nating pakikitungo. Pangalawa is pakikisalamuha. Because there is pakikitungo, so papasok na dyan yung pakikisalamuha or like the levels of mixing or with interaction. Sa una, sa pakikitungo is like amenity. Sa pakikisalamuha, while pumasok ka na or nag-up na yung level mo as pakikitungo on that person, is nakikisalamuha ka na or like nakikibagay ka na, or there is interaction between you and that or you people to other person. That is pakikisalamuha or you mixing yourself or you have an interaction na with that person na totally 100% there is trust, pero like nakikibagay ka na sa kanila. So next is pakikilahok or participation. So pakikilahok is like meron na kayong way or kasanayan na natutunan sa isa't isa or gawain na natutunan both. So hindi siya 100% na like gagawin mo na yon kasi like meron na kayong participation, hindi siya 100% na gagawin mo na lahat yun. Iintindihin mo muna kung like there is negative. Kasi as a Filipino, iisipin muna natin, ay, hindi naman to nakakasama. So, gagawin ko na to. Or, meron dito sa pagkikilahok is meron na kayong majority na ginagawa. But, not totally 100% na ginagawa mo. Ginagawa mo lang siya because of nakikilahok ka or nakikiparticipate ka na lang. Next is pakikisama. So, pakikisama is what we call adjusting. Nag-a-adjust na tayo. Dito is hindi pa siya fully trust, pero meron ng tiwala or nagditiwala ka na sa kanya. Ibig sabihin, tanggap na natin yung taong yan. For example, sa pakikisama, ikaw, like for example, religious ka. Yung mga kaibigan mo is hindi religious. Then, lumabas kayo. Then, ikaw, yung mga kaibigan mo is uminom. Tapos, nandun ka rin on that time. Tapos, nag-aya sila na uminom ka. Because of, like, sabi nila, like, once lang to. Like, ikaw, na there is, sa sarili mo is, ay, makikisama ako. Or sasabihin ka ng tropa mo, ay, makisama ka na lang. Or makisama ka. Kasi, once lang naman to. So, dyan na yung papasok yung mag-a-adjust ka na. Makikisama ka. So, ikaw na hindi umiinom dati is iinom na rin. Pero, remember, there is no, like, hindi siya fully trust. Kasi, uminom ka lang because that is specific occasion or that is specific, like, nangyari. Hindi siya like, uminom ka, ganito, tapos iinom ka naman hanggang bukas. Hindi na yun pakikisama. Ibang behavior na yun. In studying the Filipino personalities and values common fields method use. So heto, dito na natin yung mapag-uusapan yung common methods of Filipino, like paano ba sila like makipag-interact sa another person or makisalamuha sa other person or makibagay sa other person. First is pagtatanong. So, literal na sa ating mga Pilipino yung pagtatanong. So, like for example, meron kang gagawin or meron kang pupuntahan so na hindi mo alam, so magtatanong ka even though na kilala mo or hindi, kasi nasa values na nating mga Pilipino. Second is pakiramdam. So, shared inner perception. So, yung pakiramdam na to is like, kung malungkot siya sa isang tabi, tapos nadaanan mo yung that person is, then, makikiramdam ka. Papasok na yan dyan yung i-comfort mo yung tao. So, number 3 is panunuluyan. So, panunuluyan or ito na yung staying with. So, nasa common values na nating mga Pilipino na like manuluyan, makitulog sa auntie, sa tropa, or sa kakilala. So, nasa common na nating mga Pilipino yung sinasabi na panunuluyan. So, number 4 is what we call pakikipamuhay or living with. So, dahil sa Pilipino or common na sa ating Pilipino na like nanunuluyan tayo, then pag tumagal yung panahon ng panunuluyan mo sa like sa auntie mo, sa tropa mo, or sa like sa kapitbahay mo, even though na kapitbahay lang yan, pag tumagal na yan yung panunuluyan mo, dyan na papasok yung pakikipamuhay or hindi ka na nanunuluyan yan. Nakikitira ka na. Kasi matagal na eh. Kasi kung nanunuluyan ka lang, there is possibility na aalis ka rin. The actual development and implementation of methods should be sensitive to the situation and needs of the Philippines, so as a third world country. Thus, the katutubong pamamaraan or indigenous method should be designed to respond to the canon of science and at the same time cultural sensitivity and appropriate. So, in short, the indigenization or Filipinization of the social science focus on the study of ethnicity, society, culture, and its application to historical, anthropological, psychological research, and practicing using indigenous knowledge. So, the study is it will be originated on Filipino aspect and perspective